everybody.
Hi, everyone.
It's mid-morning in the northeastern corner of Wyoming.
It is at a place called Devil's Tower National Monument.
And we're really happy to be here. First of all, we are here on kind of taking a break after the big Walk in the Wild and the launch of the full Ecology book last week. We wanted to let you know that you can still get to Walk in the Wild.
It was such an enjoyable event, and Sister Helen was every bit as entertaining and inspiring as we knew she would be. So, if you haven't seen it and have a chance to, please consider registering and getting access to that video. It's about an hour, all in all, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, it's got adventure, like taking you with us out in the woods. And it's got Sister Helen and conversation between the three of us that was just a blast. All you have to do is go to our homepage, and right at the top, there's a button for how you can still get to it for a bit. So enjoy that. Yeah, and then back here, we found our way to the Black Hills.
The first national monument that Teddy Roosevelt ever put into existence.
1906.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and the other thing that's exciting for me is that I think I've heard the story of this place, and in fact, in Scott Momaday, who is Kiowa, and who was just awarded with the Pulitzer Prize.
Indeed.
I heard him tell this story in Portland once, and then we get here and we find it in the literature that the National Park has. So I'm going to read it to you. 8 children were at play, 7 sisters and their brother. Suddenly, the boy was struck dumb. He trembled and began to run upon his hands and feet. His fingers became claws, and his body was covered with fur. Directly, there was a bear where the boy had been. The sisters were terrified. They ran, and the bear after them. They came to the stump of a great tree, and the tree spoke to them. It bade them climb upon it, and as they did so, it began to rise into the air. The bear came to kill them, but they were just beyond its reach. It reared against the tree and scored the bark all around with its claws. The 7 sisters were born into the sky, and they became the stars of the Pleiades. Right here.
It's a good story.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Far less fanciful to consider the actual geology, but it's kind of interesting as well. This is somewhat of a volcanic area, and a long time ago, molten magma deep inside the earth did what's called an intrusion. It, because of forces in the earth, came up through the rock layers above it, sedimentary rock, shale, and then when that magma cooled, it became igneous rock, and kind of split into these little columns that I don't know if you can see or not, but they're really quite fascinating. And those striations, if you will, some people say that's where that bear that Mary just told you about was scratching on the old tree stump trying to get to those 7 girls and never did. So anyway, and then all of the sedimentary rock and the shale and whatnot, which are softer than igneous rock, eroded over millions and millions of years. And so what's left is that intrusion, that plug. And it's quite striking on this landscape, because this is not a landscape of big mountains or big landforms in general.
Yeah, so it's still a bit of a confounding geological event to geologists. They're still trying to figure out definitively. It's not definitive yet. But we did see in the national park or national monument literature that they decided it is a rock.
Yes, just in case you were wondering.
Yeah.
We'll take their word for it.
Yeah. This has also been, for the 10,000 years that humans have been walking around here, it's been for all of that time a sacred space, a place where many prayers have been offered. And over in the tree, just to the left of our field of vision, there's a prayer flag, or a series of prayer flags faded from probably last year, that have been hung probably by Lakota people.
Mm.
And so but I don't know, there are many tribes who find this a sacred place. The other thing that is very precious about this place is that it's public land.
Yeah, public lands. A shout out to public lands. I never thought in my life there would be any debate about how great public lands are, and most people still feel they are fantastic. But there is a growing movement of people who would like to take a great many of the public lands and sell them off to private interests. It's unpatriotic in a sense, because it's in the 1800s it was very common for writers and thinkers and even politicians to talk about the commons, which were essentially the public lands, the lands that hadn't been awarded out, especially out west, through the process of the Homestead Act, as what shaped us as people, what cultivated our sense of aesthetic, our sense of beauty. But more than that, it was a kind of great equalizer. The public lands were lands we encountered, and it didn't matter how much money you had, it didn't matter how much status you had. Those lands were open and available to you, and open to do their work on you, and inspire you and give you a sense of pride and delight in your country. And so to have that really strong patriotic tradition right here in front of us with the First National Monument means a lot to us, and I hope we continue to protect these lands for generations to come.
Yeah, and this is a big motive that really is shared across people of many different walks of life. And so this land is the land that we walk on and the land that we love, which is really all of it when it comes down to it, when we really reckon with ourselves. If there weren't the land, there wouldn't be us. And so it's a social psychological opportunity for us to see that, and to get right sized. You know, we talk about that in the book.
Yeah.
That we humans for so many years have been fancying ourselves to have dominion over, and there are a lot of reasons and not that just that we do, but that we ought to. And there are a lot of reasons that's come online, and of course we discuss it in the book, and you probably know of many of those yourself. But the effect has been for us to forget what size we really are. And that then goes into our personal relationships. It goes into the way that we structure community. Some people are better than other people because in our culture, they've got more money. Or, yeah, that's usually it. They've got more money, they've got more access, they've got more power. And so this land reminds us, we've called it, what we call it in the book, loving disinterest.
Yeah.
That there is nothing but benevolence coming towards us. You know, we joke about it, but gravity is sort of like a hug. It's sort of like this thing that you can rely on to just, yeah, I'm held. But we don't notice that.
Yeah, and then throw in the air
Yeah.
cycles, the atmospheric cycles that are stable so we can breathe, and the water cycles and the nutrient cycles that process chemicals through plants into our bodies, allow us to live. I mean, it's really, we are the recipients of a kind of benevolence that's stunning.
Abundant and very loving, but at the same time disinterested. And so what does that, I mean, it doesn't, nature's going to be here and provide for us whether we notice or not. So in our right size as human beings, what does that look like? To be connected well with each other, and to be connected and stewards of service in the natural world. These are the big questions that can go into sounding woo-woo, or can be heard as, this is real, gang. You know, we humans, including any of us, have contributed to the messes that we're in right now. And we can do what we can do. Our individual acts, our participation in more organized and collective acts.
You know,
and public land is one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, speaking of that, I was going to say, on the other side of this beautiful Devil's Tower is a parking lot, and when we drove through, it's filled with people from all over the United States, Pennsylvania to Texas to Minnesota, to on and on and on. And standing with great side of awe and humility in front of this beautiful feature. And from that sort of present moment awareness, there is an opportunity always to go in to a larger frame of reference that would include the earth as a whole,
Yeah.
not just the monument, but the monument as a doorway into considering that which is so significant, as Mary just described, to our everyday lives.
And the community, the relationships that we're in, you've heard us say this before, but we keep reminding ourselves we're in relationship with everything all the time. And so, what does that mean? That means we belong, and that means there's kinship. So, then the question is, from the relatedness of kinship, how do we wish to behave? And so, one of the big switches that we're being asked into in these days in climate breakdown is to come back to thinking first from our connection.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's not easy because we were all weaned on isolated subject object thinking, which we've talked about before. And that is a way of seeing the world as a collection of disparate objects, including other humans. And it's so entrenched in us that it takes sort of, I think, a startle, often from something beautiful in the natural world, or from some significant experience with a baby. We can be startled into a connected way of knowing. We have great capacity for that. And so if we simply start looking for those connections and declaring them as important, and in fact the reality of how things work, then I think we're going to increasingly be able to perceive them and keep that isolated way of thinking more as a tool when we need it.
Yeah, and the other thing that's implied in what Gary just said is that there is always disruption. And it may be the disruption that wakes us up. And we all know by now, no matter how old you are listening to this update, we know that disruption happens. And it is not fun. And it does not feel good. And from there, we can either hold tight to our old beliefs and our old ways of being, or we can open up. We can learn. And we've just been through mega disruption with COVID, and we're not through yet. And as I look around here right now, I'm seeing that all the grasses are still flat because a week ago there was still snow here. And that is a disruption to the growth of grasses, but we know from the way seasons turn that the grasses will come back. But that's another thing, is that it's hard when people call you on your stuff. But that's a disruption that can lead to your cracking open from this separate identity into, oh, yes, I am in relationship.
And this pandemic, which Mary was alluding to, is such a big disruption. But what are the lessons? What are some of the big lessons? Lessons about connectivity to the earth and the erasure of habitat that puts us into closer proximity with animals that could have viruses and diseases that are dangerous to us, but more than that, the connection with each other. We are only getting through this. We've only developed vaccines. We've only managed to treat people who got COVID through and then keep the rest of us safe through a vast array of essential workers, of people committed to coming together to allow us to cooperate toward a solution. And as Mary has said many times, and I think I have too, we have evolved
Yes.
to be a
Thank
cooperative species. Many evolutionary biologists claim we are the most cooperative species on Earth, which explains some of our ability to have such success or to prosper as far as the number of us and the ability to live full lives. So cooperation is key, and that's back to connection.
Yeah, it really is. And so here we are with another everything as a reminder of this connection. But what an amazing moment to get to see this monument. We call it a monument, but it is a monument of the earth. How it was thrust up, how it happened, well, the Kiowa know. It was to save the 7 sisters that are now up in the sky every night of our lives. So,
Yeah, see if you can get to some public lands. And that could be a green belt in the middle of the city where you live. It could also be something as grand as Yosemite or Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon. But go there and take what that preservation really stands for.
Yes.
What people saw and what people hoped by preserving it they would ensure for future generations. That's something really worth honoring.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's May. And then 2021. My goodness.
Goodness.
And so we will be having our deep dive on May 4th at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. And we'll be having meditation and inquiry on May 6th, same time, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. Please, if you're not connected with us through our website, go to the homepage and down to the bottom, and you can subscribe and receive newsletters. We love hearing from you. The email address is
connect@fullecology.com. Yeah, come along on the journey. We'd love to have your company.
Yeah, it's great to see you as ever. Have a wonderful May, and we'll see you in June.
Yes.
Big month.
Happy spring.
Yeah, bye for now.
Bye-bye.